Hey, what is going on, YouTubers? I'm your host, Jesse. I'm the RBPK Productions, formerly Ruffleberry Pancake. It's pretty much the same. Today I wanted to do a video on, you guessed it, right above. This will be a three-part series. It'll be a little bit of common sense. Now, a disclaimer before I get into this. I understand that there are liberals and conservatives, Democrats, Republicans, conservative Democrats, and more liberal Republicans in the audience, and I understand that some people will be watching this and you will come to different things. I'm going to leave out the whole bipartisanship on this. I'm just going to go straight for the middle, the facts, the common sense about firearms and everything like that. Being a firearm owner and growing up around firearms, I have a unique perspective because I know what it is to be around them. I have been in a shooting before. It was gang violence, but I'll get to that a little later. But for the first episode, I just want to talk about firearms in general, what they are, what their functions are, and things to expect. Growing up in Kansas and in the Midwest in general, I was around firearms quite a bit, be it a little shotgun, a .22, or a handgun, or even a rifle of many different variations. Now, what is a firearm exactly? A firearm is characterized as a system or a mechanism that can fire a round, like a bullet, for instance, like one of these, with some sort of propellant. It could be anywhere from very highly compressed gases or, of course, a powder propellant like gunpowder. With that being said, it will fire to a certain target, like a musket or a carbine, a rifle, a shotgun, or anything of that different sort. But these are firearms. When you pull a trigger or make a mechanism go or put a little match, the powder and or propellant will ignite or push the said ball, is what it's called in firearm terms, the ball, or the cone, or whatever you want to call it, out and towards said target. That being said, the accuracy is kind of left up to whoever is firing it. Now, let's go into functions again. Now, in the media, they would have you believe an AR-15 or, let's say, an H&K. Anything that looks like a military fully automatic firearm would be an assault rifle. I would consider and I would characterize an assault rifle as a firearm that has selective fire. Now, that would be a military, Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force grade, sorry, big old fly bothering me. That would be anything like that, military grade firearm. Now, that's not to say that there aren't semi-automatics, but they tend to be DMRs, longer barrels, longer guns, so that they can hit better ranges, whereas a standard Armalite rifle, which is what AR stands for, would just be, close quarters to medium range. The firearm isn't really made for long-range engagements. That's what those other firearms are for longer range, designated marksman rifle, or what would be known as a sniper rifle in other terms. That being said, there are different types of rifles. Now, I have a father that owns an AR. It's a Bushmaster. It is an AR. It looks like the military style, but in reality, it's just a churched up hunting rifle, honestly. It is semi-automatic, which that implies every time you pull said trigger, a mechanism will cause that said firearm to go off until you release it and then pull the trigger again. Now, people use assault rifles, but they don't understand that an assault rifle means not only does it have selective fire, but that also implies, let's say, for a 3-round burst, you pull the trigger, boom, boom, boom. 3 rounds are fired. You let go of the trigger, pull the trigger again, and then so on and so forth. There's 2-round, 3-round, and even 5-round burst firearms. With that being said, there's also what we call the giggle switch, which is going fully auto. That implies when you pull the trigger, bam, 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 and it will continue to fire until A, the cartridge magazine or internal magazine is empty, or you let go of the trigger. Now, you can burst around with this and maybe get 8 rounds downrange, whereas a burst fire tends to do 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, it just depends. That being said, that is what would be characterized as a military assault rifle. I have an airsoft gun of a Tavor 21, and I have a Tavor 21 actual rifle. I would not characterize that Tavor as an assault rifle because it cannot go fully automatic. I will bring that up a little later. That rifle is considered a semi-automatic, which means you can pull the trigger, and it will fire just about every time unless mechanical failure happens, which happens in firearms quite a bit because they aren't perfect. They make mistakes internally. It could be machining issues and that whatnot. That being said, there are also things like handguns, which it could be a revolver, a flintlock. It could even be something that's fed through a magazine, not a clip, a magazine, that it's fed through the bottom. It could even be stripper clipped, which would be a little steel clip that holds the rounds, and as you put them inside, you slot them down inside the firearm, like a Mauser C1896. That being said, you've got shotguns too, which are tube-fed. It can be a blunderbuss. I mean, there's a lot of different firearms out there. There's even carbines, which are shortened rifles made for really close quarters combat, like what a Tavor would be in the military style would be a micro Tavor. With that being said, those are the many different types, and you need to know the distinction. Again, I would ask you, liberal or conservative or whatever political belief you are, to do your own research. There is a lot of problems with the media today, and I think everybody across the aisle could agree that the media does like to church things up. It does like to exaggerate, and they certainly do like to play their own narrative. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to tell you the truth and give you facts, because facts don't lie. Just like numbers in the universe, there's two things that don't lie: solid facts and numbers. Well, I'm going to give you the numbers of this situation, but not in this episode. Again, this is just going to be describing a firearm. Now, what are the capabilities of a civilian rifle or an army rifle? Now, I did explain this. A civilian rifle is most likely going to be a semi-automatic or a handgun or a shotgun or something of that sort, or even long-range rifles if you can get a hold of them. But on the army-style or military-style firearm, which would be, I would again classify as an assault rifle, is not exactly gettable by the standard civilian. Johnny, just Jesse Hill, run-of-the-mill average Joe, cannot get a hold of an assault rifle. There are a lot of laws in place. Now, a lot of the more liberal people in office today and a lot of the more anti-gun people around the world would say, well, that's not true. That's not even close. You can get a firearm real easy. Not an assault rifle. That costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. I know somebody who actually has one, and he is a very responsible gun owner. I will not divulge any names on that. But it costed him $30,000 to buy an automatic firearm. The 80s, during the Reagan era, saw that it was very difficult to get an assault rifle, and the import bans and everything like that just made it very difficult. There's a set amount of number here. They're a collector's item at this point. Now, most gun owners would say that fully automatic is kind of unnecessary. It overdoes it, and more often than not, if you're not a trained shooter, you don't know what you're doing, it's just an uncontrollable beast, so to speak. I mean, you can still control it, but it's hard to aim. Now, for the most part, unless you can just muscle the gun, which, again, it just depends on who you are. Again, that is just who you are. It can depend. Again, everything depends on who you are as a person, what you're capable of, what your competence level is with the firearm or the mechanism or the tool, as I like to call it, is. With that being said, the laws have made it very difficult for a civilian to not only get a hold of one, purchase one, or even find one for that matter. That includes handguns, fully automatic handguns, fully automatic shotguns, and there are fully automatic shotguns, and in many cases would be considered a weapon of mass destruction because, well, a fully automatic shotgun is scary. I wouldn't want to be an army man or an enemy soldier on the receiving end of something like an AA-12. But that being said, you also have fully automatic rifles. Again, automatic rifles would be considered like an AR or a Tavor or a Heckler & Koch of some sort, or a FAL, the free hand of the right arm of the free world, as they call it. But with that being said, these are not exactly gettable. Not only is there a massive fee, because again, these are semi-rare rifles, you're not going to get a hold of one very easily, but that and the fact that there are a lot of background checks, they said about 3 to 4 months of background checks to ensure that you're not a bad guy, and there's also a lot of stamps and taxes you got to pay for that, and taxes, let's say a 10% tax on $30,000 it's crazy. It's very crazy. So you'd have to be not only, a Boy Scout, or Girl Scout for that matter, but you'd also have to have some serious money to dump. So the media would have you believe that assault rifles are very easy to get, but they're really not. Selective fire rifles are very difficult. And selective fire handguns or anything in general is incredibly difficult to get, and the average Tom, Dick, and Harry like myself or Henriette would not be able to get an automatic firearm so easily. Now, with that being said, again, of all the different firing systems out there, a lot of people say, well, the AR is the problem. The AR is the problem. Well, statistically speaking, the handgun is really the problem. The AR is the most scary looking just because you put a forward grip in a folding stock, but that doesn't necessarily make it statistically true. Yes, there are mass shootings, but that's not necessarily the firearm's fault. We ought to remember that this is a heart problem. I don't know about you, but and like I said, I have a loaded magazine right here I'm not going to put this in my rifle and go hurt somebody. I'm not doing it right now, but the media would have you believe that I would, and I'm willing to. Well, I'm a law-abiding citizen. Heck, I wouldn't hurt a fly, frankly. But again, that's not what, most people, the loud few's narrative is, because the vast majority of people are good people. I believe that. Some people may smoke a little pot. Some people may have had a bad past, but that doesn't make a person a bad person, per se. Now, if you're crazy and you say, well, I should skin a cat and wear it as a hat, well, maybe you need medicine, or maybe you need help, and I'm not making it light of all the tragedies in this country, but at the end of the day, somebody like me is not going to hurt anybody. Somebody like me is not going to want to go out and hurt anybody because I have a life to live and I don't want to live it behind a cell or with a bullet in my head. Make that very short. The truth is that the vast majority of firearm owners are just like me. They just want people to understand. Now, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. I'm an undecided kind of. I would be what you'd call a more of a libertarian, more of a middle kind of person. I believe in both sides, but I don't believe either side is wrong, certainly. But I do believe the left side has been a little misled by very powerful individuals that want ill will on some people. And I do believe that the conservatives have been very ignorant and arrogant lately. With that being said, I would say that I believe in the Constitution, and I believe in people. I believe that my father isn't going to hurt anybody. I believe some of my best friends aren't going to hurt anybody. And I believe in myself and by my morals that I wouldn't want to hurt anybody. So why is it that I'm being characterized with all these other bad guys? They say they want more gun control with the laws. But in reality, what they want is for guns to go away. And I think a logical person in the world would understand that that's just not how things work. Firearms won't go away just because we want them to. They can't. That's just not what it is. When you look at people that break the law, just because you make something outlawed, it doesn't mean it's going to go away, guys. I want to provide this information on the firearm and what a firearm is in this first episode so that you know what a firearm is. And if you have the opportunity in a safe environment with somebody who will teach you how to fire a weapon safely and discharge that firearm down a range where no one's going to get hurt, or you have an uncle or an aunt or whoever that will teach you safely and understand the firearm, I believe you'll come to a different conclusion that the firearm isn't necessarily dangerous. You wouldn't operate a saw without reading the manual or understanding the danger that a saw inherently has, or would inherently have in general, or any tool for that matter. You wouldn't just get on a CNC machine and say, well, press a button. There are some people that would do that, but the vast majority of people that are unschooled in tools would go, okay, I need to read something or study up, It's the same thing with firearms. The vast majority of firearms owner like myself would never want to use a firearm. I was frankly scared the first time I shot a firearm. The first one I ever shot was a Browning high power, and I was a little. I had the gunshot flinch like a lot of people did, but it didn't give me PTSD, and I'm not going to church that up just to suit my narrative, because frankly, I don't think guns are the problem. They really aren't if you look at it at a logical standpoint. The problem is that there are people that are willing to sidestep the law and everything like that, which we'll cover in the second episode. But to quote a famous poet, he's unnamed, a free man owns a gun, a slave doesn't. I want that to sink into you guys, because it's a lot better to have said firearm of various different types. Sorry about that, I've been updating Blizzard. But it's a lot better to have... Oh, goodness gracious, no, leave me alone. But it's a lot better... Okay, thank you. But anyway, it's a lot better to have a said firearm and never use it ever, just to sit on your shelf, than to never have it and need it. It's just like a fire extinguisher. You pray to God every day, or whoever you pray, or whatever you believe in, that, man, I hope my house doesn't burn up. But you still have the fire extinguisher. You hope that one day you don't die accidentally, but you still buy life insurance. Why is that? Well, I think that the Founding Fathers knew exactly what they were doing when they were making these laws, which again I will talk about. So, in summation of the first episode, I want you to understand that a firearm is only as dangerous as the user, and that the firearm can't do anything inherently by itself. A firearm will never go off on its own unless in extreme negligence. Like, let's say you left it out near some extreme heat, like some fire. Of course the rounds are going to go off because the powder is sensitive to extreme temperatures. With that being said, I could lay this magazine, and I could put my gun on the other side of the room, or just right in front of it. This firearm does not have the AI capability to load itself and to shoot. And even then, it's going to be laying on its side. It's not going to have arms or legs, so it's not going to be shooting at anything but the wall next to me, which doesn't go anywhere. The point is it's an inanimate object, and should it be respected? Absolutely. But at the same time, one person's problems versus someone's rights doesn't mean that that person should give up their rights. How you feel doesn't dictate how everyone else feels. And even if you are yelling and you're screaming into the microphone louder than anybody else, that doesn't mean that your way is going to be the way it should be. Not in a free society, at least. And when we forget that, we forget who we are as people. We should be understanding, and we should be willing to stand up against injustices. But at the same time, we shouldn't be taking the news or the media or our favorite senator's word for it. We should always take it. We should always do our own research. We're Americans. We're informed. We have education. And sometimes the best teacher is experience. So again, I encourage you guys to set aside your differences and actually look at things objectively. I don't care who you are or what you believe in, because at the end of the day, governments fall apart. Things don't last forever. But I'll tell you something, that your knowledge can last you throughout the rest of your life. And yes, a firearm isn't for everybody. And that's the great thing about our free society. You have every right to not want to own a firearm. But just because you don't like firearms does not imply that you can enforce your beliefs on somebody else. It's the same thing with religion or with car tastes. It's not up to somebody else to make that decision for you. It's up to you as a citizen in the United States. It's one of the founding principles of our country, and you certainly can't have a house stand when you take out a cornerstone. There's going to be sagging. There's going to be problems. And to put it lightly, something is going to happen eventually. Now, I'm not saying that the government's going to go crazy on you. That may or may not happen. But then again, we can't say it can't. I mean, history states that sometimes bad people get the bad thoughts in their hearts and minds, and they do bad things. It just happens. And you have to accept that as a possibility or a probability. Murphy's Law is pretty universal in that. Anything bad or good that can happen possibly will or maybe will or can happen. It's a possibility. It is on the table. And you should never be so arrogant to believe that it can't. Well, guys, I love you. I thank you for showing up. I thank you for watching this very long video, and I look forward to your comments, what you guys think, and if you like this video and think that it should get some likes, please like and subscribe and even share. It would mean the world to me. I don't mean to upset anybody, and I don't mean to step on any toes, but I certainly want to make sure that as Americans, and the moral hierarchy that Americans are and can be, that we are the most informed, and that we can do the most right. As always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you